Good evening. My name is Dale Jackson, and I'm the pastor here at Riverside Presbyterian Church. You are welcome into this time of worship. You're invited to join us on Easter Sunday at 10 a.m. for our service when we will celebrate communion together, but in our homes. To prepare for the sacrament, please have juice or another beverage and bread or crackers ready. Each time we gather to worship in this way, I share some tips with you. So just as you would if you were in the sanctuary, you're invited to silence your cell phone. Plan to devote time to God and not multitask. Consider printing out the bulletin. For this evening's service, you are invited to have a bowl of water and a towel ready for your use. You may use the prelude as a time to gather these items. And finally, if you can do so safely, consider lighting a candle. We light the Christ candle to remind us of Christ's presence with us and our call to be Christ for the world. Let us worship God. Join me as we call ourselves to worship. Though we are scattered in homes, apartments, households, we can still gather in God's heart. Though we cannot gather as God's household, we can still find ourselves together in God's heart and love. Alone, with family, with just our pets, we begin to understand the weariness, the uncertainty, the questions which sat around that table long ago with Jesus and his friends. We are still God's beloved, the God who is with us in these moments, these days, these nights. We are still the followers of Jesus, the Jesus who would wash our hearts of our doubts and fears. We are still comforted by the Spirit who blesses us this night. Join me as we turn to God in prayer. Isolated, enslaved by fears and anxieties, wondering what the next day would bring, they gathered in their homes, some alone, some together, on that night so long ago, for a meal which they did not understand, and in a moment which would change them forever. God who rescues, hear our prayers. Fearful, worried, isolated from their families, friends, and neighbors by events beyond their imagination, they gathered so long ago for a meal which they thought they understood, but which you transformed that night, Jesus, who knelt to serve them, to prepare them for that moment which would change them forever. On this night, isolated, alone, held captive by fears we don't understand, separated from neighbors, friends, and families, yet we gather, scattered where we are, drawing near to one another in your heart, Spirit, who shares these stories with us. With your whispers of grace, you remind us you are transforming us as we are still made one with each other. Those nights, this night, every night, with our ancestors who dared to believe, who lived through their fears and doubts, we dare to follow you, God, in community, holy and one. Amen. Hear these words from the Gospel of John, the 13th chapter. Before the Passover festival began, Jesus was keenly aware that his hour had come to depart from this world and to return to God. From beginning to end, Jesus' days were marked by his love for his people. Jesus, knowing that he had come from God and was going away to God, stood up from dinner and removed his outer garments. He then wrapped himself in a towel, poured water in a basin, and began to wash the feet of the disciples, drying them with his towel. Peter said, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" "Peter," Jesus said, "you don't realize what I'm doing, but you will understand later." "You will not wash my feet," protests Peter, "now or ever." "Peter," says Jesus, "if I don't wash you, you will have nothing to do with me." "Then wash me, but don't stop with my feet," says Peter. "Cleanse my hands and my head as well." After supper, Jesus asks, "Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and truly that is who I am. So if your Lord and teacher washes your feet, then you should wash one another's feet. I am your example. Keep doing what I do. I tell you the truth. A servant is not greater than the master. Those who are sent are no greater than the one who sends them. If you know these things, and if you put them into practice, you will find happiness. I give you a new command. Love each other deeply and fully. Remember the ways that I have loved you, and demonstrate your love for others in those same ways. Everyone will know you as my followers if you demonstrate your love to others. Here ends our reading. The parade from Sunday is over. The palm branches have started to shrivel. Jesus has gathered with his disciples, and according to the author of John, is aware of what is to come. Betrayal and death are imminent. If you knew you were going to die, what would you do? Would you throw a party? Travel the world? Maybe go and spend all your money? Or would you choose to spend time with those you love? What would you tell them? Would you give them advice, share your hopes and dreams for them? Those are the questions Jesus faces in our gospel reading. He understands the devastation, pain, and fear his disciples will live through in the coming days. So he kneels in front of those he loves, those who have been his friends and companions, and he lovingly bathes their feet. It is an act often performed by a house servant, but this night he washes the dust and the cares of the day away. And as is custom, he massages ointment on their feet. He tells them that they are to follow his lead, that they are to take care of one another and all people. The end is near, and Jesus decides not to tell a parable or a story, but give a commandment. Love one another. And then he says that that is how others will know that they are his followers, if you have love for others. As end-of-life advice goes, it is pretty straightforward. He doesn't list a bunch of things that they have to do and say, like believe the right way, worship in this way, attend church every Sunday, make sure you are baptized the right way, read your Bible, pray every day. No. The advice, the command he gives at the end of his life, when he sums up all his teachings, is love one another. So simple. And yet we still haven't managed to get it right. New Testament scholar D.A. Carson says, this new commandment is simple enough for a toddler to memorize and appreciate, and yet it is profound enough that the most mature believers are repeatedly embarrassed at how poorly they comprehend it and put it into practice. Love one another. It's not a suggestion Jesus gives. It is a command. And he doesn't give any qualifiers as to who we are to love, just that we are to love one another. It's not a matter of personal preference. It is a command. He doesn't say act as if you love. He doesn't say do things to make people think you love them, even when you really don't. He says, love one another. G.K. Chesterton once wrote that the Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried. Love one another. As I have loved you, is his dying wish. Take a minute and imagine what the church would be like if we took Jesus' commandments seriously. Imagine what the world would look like if we took his commandments seriously. I mean, just think about what would the world be like if our goal, our aim, our desire was to love. I mean, if it was, I know some things that would be different right now. Because right here in the greater Chicago area, we wouldn't need our mayor to implore us to stay home for the health of another. We would do it because we love another. And while staying home, we wouldn't complain while sitting all day in our home, because we would realize that there are people who must face being exposed to this virus because it is their job. We would remember that at least we have a home, and we're not homeless and forced into an overcrowded shelter. Yeah, if we truly loved one another, we would behave differently. And the way we love one another is how everyone will know we follow Jesus. Meaning love above all else is the most important thing. In her article, If You Love, Debbie Thomas says it this way: our love for each other is how the world will know who we are and whose we are. Our love for each other is how the world will see, taste, touch, hear, and find Jesus. It's through our love that we will embody Jesus, make Jesus relatable, possible, plausible to a dying world. She wrote the article over a year ago, but I was captured by her words. Embody Jesus to a dying world. It seems as if she wrote them for today, when we listen to news reports to hear the death tally for the day. If there was ever a time for us to love, it is this moment. Long ago, Jesus demonstrated his love by washing his disciples' feet. An act that everyone did numerous times a day. Every time you came inside from the dry, dusty streets, you washed your feet. Right now, our modern-day counterpoint is washing our hands. We do it every time we come inside. We do it to be safe, but also to keep others safe. So this evening, instead of washing our feet, we're going to wash our hands. For my bowl, I'm using our baptismal bowl, because I want us to remember the power of baptismal waters as we wash. When we celebrate baptism, I say baptism is the church's way of celebrating and naming the grace of God living in every one of God's children. And then I remind us that our sacrament focuses around water. Water is a precious commodity. Water is everything. Water is life. This night and every time we wash our hands, we claim the joy of water and the way it sustains and nourishes us. So let it flow and pour and sprinkle for all people, so that all may know each day the gift of God in water. The Bible is full of stories that talk about the preciousness of water. The stories remind us that water is a blessing and the source and the strength of life. Without it, humanity and all that is created could not survive. And our stories remind us that God's way is the way of compassion and love. Our stories remind us that God's love is like a shower of rain and drought that awakens the sleeping seed within the soul and lures it to blossom. That God's love is like a paddling pool, which inspires the responsive love of children jumping and splashing each other, shivering with delight. The stories remind us that God's love is like a hot shower after a long day's work. It cleanses us, reawakens us. The God's love is like waves crashing on the shore, breaking in on us and enfolding us and leaving us feeling vital and refreshed. When we wash our hands, it is an opportunity for us to experience God's love anew. Let us pray. Loving God, we acknowledge our responsibility to ensure we use the resources of water well and make available future resources for our children and their children. We give you thanks for the gift of this water. May it be the birthing waters of a new and holy life. May it be the saving and cleansing waters of all who wash. Amen. You are invited to give thanks for your bowl of water, and then as you feel led, you're invited to dip your hands in life-giving water. And as you feel the coolness of the water, remember that God's love circles and enfolds you. And then pause and ask yourself if others know who you follow by the love you show.
Fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. Kneels at the feet of his friends, silently washes their feet. Master who pours out himself for them. Yesu, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. Neighbors are rich folk and poor, varied in color and race. Neighbors are nearby and far away. Yesu, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. These are the ones we should serve. These are the ones we should love. All these are neighbors to us and you. Yesu, Yesu, fill us with your love. Show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you.
This night, as we extinguish the Christ candle, we acknowledge the darkness and pain of all the children in the world who suffer in body, in mind, or in spirit. We acknowledge the darkness and pain of war and oppression in the world. We acknowledge the darkness of pain and violence in the world and to the earth. We acknowledge the darkness and pain of illness and disease in the world. This night, spend some time in silence, so you may hear the whispers of all who have been forgotten, except by God. Let us learn the art of compassion from Jesus to bring healing and hope to everyone we meet. Let us be open to the promises the Spirit speaks in the moment of our utter grief and loss. Amen.